Hey guys, so today I'm working on a rather unusual project. This is the throttle cable housing that goes on my handlebars. You see the two bolts go through here and the throttle cable goes in there, and I hit it on something at one point. I noticed it was cracked, so I unbolted it and the thing just fell apart on me. So I'm going to kind of do a rush job. I was supposed to go on the Big Bear trail ride tomorrow, which is like a 200-mile enduro ride, but I can't do that until I fix this. So I've got some aluminum brazing rod here and a torch. I'm going to try to clean this up and mend this back together at least well enough to get me through this ride. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'm crossing my fingers, and we'll see how it goes. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is kind of like a powder coat finish to it. Obviously the brazing rod's not going to stick to that, so I'm just going to take a Dremel tool, a small grinding bit, and I'm going to try to take this material down a little bit so that I can get a good stick. Obviously when I go to do the brazing rod, I can only braze it from one side, which is the outside, because you've got the throttle cable that's going to be moving through here, and then this part clamps on the handlebars, so I can't really put any material there without grinding it down, because it's just going to get in the way of the components on the inside. So my best bet is to try to clean up this outside surface and then just amass a bunch of material here on the outside and hope it stays well enough to hold it at least for one ride. Alright, so I've got all the powder coat removed from both of these pieces here, at least enough to get a good bond between the two pieces. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up as good as I can. I've got some acetone here in a dish, and I'm just going to scrub it with a wire brush, get all good, and all these little porous grooves here. I want to make sure those are all cleaned out and make sure that this thing gets as good of a connection as it can. So I think I got all the oils off of these now. I'm just going to let them dry completely, and then I'll try to use the brazing rod. Alright, so I've got these two pieces jointed up to each other now. I originally started using the vise, and that didn't work out very well because as the material heated up, they kind of shifted a little bit, and the gap just kind of grew between the two pieces of material. So I think this is going to be the best way to do it, just some C-clamps and strapping it down to the table. So I'm going to take the brazing rod now, and I'm going to try to braze these two halves together. If you've never used brazing rod before, basically what you're going to do is you're going to heat up the two pieces that you're going to braze together, and then you're going to use this like a kind of a stick welder, and you're just going to use the heat of the material to melt this into the two halves of the material. You're just going to kind of build up a good base, kind of pull it up a little bit as much as you can, and then you're just going to leave it alone and let it dry or cool down and harden. You want to make sure that you're not hitting the brazing stick with the flame, because if you do that, the brazing rod's melting point is a lot lower than this material. So if you want to get a good bond between the two materials, you're going to want to heat this up and then braze this to it and let this material melt the brazing rod. So I'm going to use a torch. I'm going to run my flame right about there. I'm just going to hold it on here until it gets hot enough. You want to make sure you sneak up on the temperature. Actually, I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. You don't want to go too hot too fast. You want to use this as kind of a temperature gauge to see how hot this material is, because it's really easy to heat the aluminum up too hot and then just melt it and ruin the whole project, whereas you know the melting temperature of this is pretty low, so if you just heat it up and then take this off and kind of melt it on here, you'll know that the temperature is about right, but you don't want to go too much hotter than what it takes to melt this brazing rod. just going to go ahead and let that cool. It didn't turn out as pretty as I wanted it to, but I guess under the situation it's going to be alright. Try to build up as much material kind of in that valley there as I could and bridge it across over here. I'm going to have to take a Dremel tool or something and kind of clean out around there so I can get the bolts back in place. And also have to trim off a little material there on the grinder. But I think other than that, I'm just hoping I got this good enough so that it'll hold. Brazing material is quite a bit harder than regular aluminum. I don't know how they mix the alloys into the material, but you can tell, like if you take a scribe or some sort of hard material like a drill bit and you rub it up against the aluminum brazing rod and then you rub it up against a piece of regular aluminum, the brazing rod once it's hardened is significantly harder than regular aluminum. So it doesn't take that much material to make a really strong connection, but I would imagine it's also a bit more brittle than regular aluminum too. But hopefully this is good enough to last for one long ride. It's not like this is under a whole lot of strain unless it gets hit directly on a rock or something like that. So I'm just going to throw it back on there once it cools down and call it good. Hopefully it works. So here you can see the finished product. It's a little bit ugly, but I think it's definitely going to hold. It feels, you know, very sturdy to me, and it's lined up just about perfect. I wound up taking out a little bit of material through here to get the bolt in there. I wound up having to use a carbide bit. It's almost like a milling bit, but they make these for Dremel tools to dig that out because the regular grinding stones they gum up with the aluminum, so that didn't really work too well. So I just got back from the Big Bear trail ride. We did about 137 miles out of the 200 miles of hard track. And as you can see, this thing held up great. I wasn't worried about it at all, honestly. I didn't even think about it while I was out there. I didn't have any issues with the throttle cable sticking. It didn't crack. I'm going to go ahead and replace it just for my peace of mind, but I think honestly if I left that there, it wouldn't be an issue for quite some time. It is good to know though that, you know, with aluminum parts like this, aluminum brazing rod seems to be a really good solution when you're in a pinch if you need to patch a hole or fix a part in a hurry. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you found this useful. If you're ever in a situation with a busted aluminum part, maybe you can mend it back together with some brazing rod if you're in a pinch. If you have any thoughts or comments on this project, you can go ahead and throw those in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as we can. As always, you know, like this video and subscribe to our content if you like the videos that we're putting out. We really appreciate it.